So Sony is in the news today, right? Sony's in the news over Michael Jackson. Now, if you know anything about Sony and Michael Jackson, it's a bad story. There is I think it's called Musical Mythos or whatever. It's on Razor Fist's channel where he goes through the entire Michael Jackson saga. If you haven't checked out Razor Fist, I really recommend it on YouTube. He does a lot in regards to music coverage that I think is really good. And he broke this story down with Michael Jackson and Sony, and you can see how badly Sony threw Michael Jackson under the bus because Sony wanted to make money off of Michael Jackson music, and they did everything they possibly could to screw him over, which is one of the reasons why this particular story that's coming out today about the accusation that Sony had in fact, basically hired a Michael Jackson impersonator to record vocals for an album from 2010 does not seem entirely unfounded on me, even though Sony here says that the vocals on the album are 100% real, that they are 100% Michael Jackson. And this, again, is going to be a big topic of discussion going forward. Now, it says articles published on Thursday claim that Sony Music had admitted in a court hearing earlier this week that 3 tracks on Michael, the 2010 Michael Jackson album released posthumously by Sony Epic Records, contained lead vocals that were not actually by Michael Jackson, an assertion that the company denied in a statement, saying here that no one conceded that Michael Jackson did not sing the songs. This is coming from Zia Mobader of Katten München Roseman LLP, who's representing Sony Music and the Jackson estate, saying here the hearing Tuesday was about whether the First Amendment protects Sony Music and the estate, and there's been no ruling on the issue of whose voice is on the recordings. So while that's kind of the statement itself is like not necessarily saying that it's not really the case here. They go, oh, there's been no ruling on whether or not those are legitimately the recordings of Michael Jackson, right? Notice how they're kind of wording their way around that. It's interesting. Now, the songs in question are Breaking News, Monster, and Keep Your Head Up, which were released on Michael, the first album from Splashy 10 album 2010 deal between Jackson's estate and Epic Records to compete and issue dozens of previously unreleased recordings by the singer. While the deal, estimated at the time, could bring in $250 million to the estate, called for the 10 albums to be released over the next 7 years, and just 2 have emerged in that time period. So that's an interesting thing too, where they paid out, it's potential earnings of $250 million for 10 unreleased albums for Michael Jackson, and they've only done 2, and it's been 4 years since the last one, which is really, it is interesting to me. I don't really have a theory or an opinion or speculation on that. I just find that to be, why would you sit there when you know Michael Jackson music does well and not put it out there? Could it be that it was just not very good music? That could be the case, but I do find that to be fascinating. Now it says, although all involved parties have claimed that the recordings were faked since they were first released in 2010, the court hearing stems from a 2014 class action lawsuit brought by a fan, Vera Sarova, against Sony Music, John Branca, co-executive of the estate, MJJ Productions, and the songwriters in question. Now, according to the lawsuit, in November 2010, Sony stated, "We have complete confidence in the results of our extensive research, as well as the accounts of those who were in the studio with Michael, that the vocals on the new album are his own." This is coming from Howard Weitzman, an attorney for Jackson's estate. Now, it says here that they released a statement citing multiple engineers, musicians, vocal directors, executives, musicologists, as concluding that the vocals were in fact Jackson's. Now, Sony and the Jackson estate sought to throw out the lawsuit based on California's anti-SLAPP statute, which protects speech on matters of public interest. The trial court judge denied the motion, prompting Sony and the estate to appeal. The argument was heard Tuesday by a three-judge panel of the Second District Court of Appeal. Whether or not the vocals are indeed Jackson's are not the purpose of the Tuesday hearing, but rather whether the album's liner notes are protected by the First Amendment. So again, it's not. There's this big push for this whole thing right now, where they're trying to make it about. I think people are trying to push the narrative that there weren't real vocals as a way to maybe draw some more attention to this or get people to dig into this a bit more. Now it goes on to say here that when you review the motion on appeal, you're assuming that everything in the complaint is true. It's coming from Brian Friedman, who represents the defendants. Any admission that was made for purposes of that argument only. Or any admission that was made was for purposes of that argument only. A ruling on the anti-SLAPP motion is due in the next 90 days. Among the other issues, a 2014 lawsuit raises a question of whether people who purchased the album or songs are entitled to a refund in whole or in part of the purchase price of the album Michael and or the songs. Now, that's interesting because, again, they're trying to say that it wasn't legitimately him, so they're trying to push for maybe getting a refund. Now, according to sources close to the situation, individuals who attended Tuesday's court hearing seized upon a statement by an attorney for Jackson's estate in which he said something to the effect of, even if the vocals weren't Jackson's, as proof that they were indeed faked, the sources insist that the attorney was speaking speculatively. Okay, so it becomes this issue of whether or not, this one lawyer's opinion or what this one lawyer's statement is going to be enough to get people to really dive into that one. I would not put it past Sony to hire a Michael Jackson impersonator to finish the songs, to get it out there, because ultimately at the end of the day, their motivation is money. Their motivation is the bottom line. That's what it always boils down to, right? So if that's the case, yeah, getting someone else out there to do it, and they're going to be sneaky about it. So if this gets any more attention, this could start digging into that, and we could see more out of it. But I don't know, man. I mean, I can't sit there and say this was happening. I think people want it to be fake, I think, at this point, because they really want to screw over Sony in regards to Michael Jackson. But then again, at the same time, when you make a deal with the Jackson estate for releasing 10 unreleased albums that could bring in an approximate $250 million over a 7-year deal, and you've only released, like 2 of them, and in that time period, and the last one was 4 years ago, something tells me there's something up with this. Something tells me they haven't been able to make it perfect, which means if that's true, and if that's the case, then it's entirely possible that they have not been able to find a Michael Jackson impersonator that could, in fact, and this is all speculation, by the way, I'm speculating, that could, in fact, sound like the King of Pop himself, which, if that's the case, just let it all die. We have our best of Michael Jackson. We have, Thriller. We've got Billie Jean. We've got Smooth Criminal. We've got Beat It. We've got all of his tracks. We can live with that. We're okay with that. This just kind of feels like they're trying to further maybe tarnish the reputation. I know they're not trying to tarnish the reputation of Michael Jackson, because in regards to his actual reputation, I think anything could really kind of be done on that one. I don't know. I have to wait and see on this one, but I definitely turn it over to you guys for your thoughts and opinions.